Hey, so I just saw the third Bill and Ted movie, Bill and Ted Face the Music, and of course before I talk about this film I should say very quickly what I thought about the first two. I just released a Nostalgia Critic episode about, so you can check them out there, but just super quick Cliff Note version. The first one I think is a lot of fun. It's really stupid, but it's very fun and has a good sense of humor. It's very imaginative. Had a lot of fun. Second one's a little bit more awkward, but it's super creative. One of the most original sequels ever written, in my opinion. And it still has a lot of great laughs, a lot of scenes I remember, and again, super imaginative. So now, years later, I think almost like 30 years later, something like that, we have this third Bill and Ted movie. I mean, just everybody that can come back for it has come back, and it is not one of those movies you can necessarily say like in one sentence how it is, but if I was to try real quick, I'd say it starts off absolutely hilarious. Like, oh my god, we're in good hands. Like, thank god they brought the original writers back and the same people, because it was just so funny. And then maybe around, I want to say the halfway point, but it might even be like just the last third. Something happens where it just, the laughs are not as strong, and the ideas are not as strong. And I was getting really concerned, because I'm like, oh man, is this going to end on a really bad note? Pun intended, I guess. And it ends on just a good enough note. And even that note is very rushed. Like, it ends very abruptly. Like, when the credits hit, we were just kind of looking at it confused. Like, did it really just stop that quick? Like, that was so fast. Even, like, the end, there is one end credit sequence. Again, I won't give it away, but it's not really needed. I mean, I didn't do much for me, but so I guess if I had to sum it up in a word, okay. It's all right, but it's hard for me to say that because some of the scenes in this movie are so funny and some of the ideas are so clever and so strong. So the very, very basic setup, I mean, you've seen some of it in the trailers. It's years later, Bill and Ted are much older now, and they have kids of their own. They're going through couples counseling. You've seen this in the trailer, and something's happening where the time itself is warping around because the song that's supposed to change the world, it hasn't happened. So they're trying to sort of cheat time, kind of, by going into the future to their future selves to get the song, sort of stealing the song for themselves. And every time they go to the future, every version of their future selves is awful. It is really, really bad, and every version gets worse and worse, which is by far the best part of the movie. I was actually kind of hoping the whole film would be this. And then there's a subplot, which is also very funny, with their two daughters, which really do very good impressions and are very, very funny. The casting in this is great. And they're afraid that, that they're in trouble, which they are, so they go and try to recruit the band members to create this fantastic song. So they try to get the best musicians from history, or at least some of them. And again, much like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, a lot of them are very committed to their characters. Some of it's, just so great to watch and just feels so much like Bill and Ted. Like, there's a scene where Jimi Hendrix convinces Mozart to join them simply by playing guitar with his music. He doesn't even say who he is or he's from the future or anything. He just starts jamming with him. And it's a great moment. And those moments are just so wonderful. But where it weirdly goes, seat adjustment, where it weirdly kind of gets less funny, and I couldn't believe this, and again, you see us in the trailer, so it's not a big giveaway. They do go to hell, which is already kind of odd. In Bogus Journey, they establish very clearly why they go to hell. In this one, they die, but all these people that go to hell doesn't exactly make sense. But again, a lot of things in these movies don't make sense. It's not a huge deal. But the laughs aren't as strong. I remember hell being one of the most interesting and funnier places in the Bill and Ted movies, and it's just kind of what you see in the trailers. It's this very generic looking hell. You don't see anyone go into their own personal hells or anything like that. It's something where I feel like it can almost be cut from the movie. And even when they see death again, which does have some laughs. I'm not going to say there's no laughs at all, but it does kind of stumble a little bit. It feels a little slower. There's a little dead air in there as well. Some of the editing's a little off. Some of the lines aren't as good. And when you get to the climax of the movie, again, I won't give it away, but they're building... How do I put it? Everything that's built up in the Bill and Ted movies is kind of changed a little bit to a point I feel like some people might get really pissed off about it. But they do technically keep true to what they've built up, how this future exists and who's responsible for it and stuff like that. Kinda. Like there's... Again, with these Bill and Ted movies, I mean, you have to know that there's stuff that's always kind of changing. It's never 100%. I mean, if time travel really worked like in 12 Monkeys, where they could go back and talk to themselves and, tell them to go on the excellent adventure and so forth, there's still a lot of things that, couldn't be changed at all, and they constantly are in these movies, so that's not too big a deal to me, but I was almost gonna get angry when I felt like they were really changing, how the future works, and I guess technically who's responsible for the future, even though we kind of predicted it a little bit early on, and they follow through with that, but then they also do a little cheating, to make it where it's like, oh, no, it's still Bill and Ted as well, look, here's this going on, here's this connection, so you kind of go, yeah, all right, it just sort of barely works by the end. Which is weird because I'm thinking to myself, I'm thinking back how funny it started off, and just for 2/3 of the movie, I'm like, this is gold. I mean, this is just really, really funny. All the actors are great. Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves fall so naturally back into their roles, but still with the understanding that they are older. And I think that's very important. I think if they just acted like normal Bill and Ted, when they were teens and stuff like that, this wouldn't have worked and will felt odd. It still addresses that they are older, they act a little older, but it's still Bill and Ted. If you want the younger Bill and Ted, that's why they have the daughters there. The daughters are very, very funny, and they have the energy, and they're really, really doing the shtick and have a lot more, the movements down and stuff like that, and so sort of the new youthful idiocy, that definitely comes from them, but also kind of comes from a satire of the current generation and everything. So all of that is great. I guess it's one of those where it started off on such a high note and carried through for such a fair amount that when it gets to that last third, it is a little bit of a letdown, because you think, okay, now they're in hell. Well, it's going to get super funny. Well, now they're coming across death. Well, this is going to get even better, because they were such great parts in Bogus Journey, and they're not that hot, sadly. And there's also a robot that chases them down that at first is a little funny because he's kind of awkward, but that kind of doesn't play out the more he's on screen too. So I don't want to say it overstays its welcome, because I feel like where the story goes and the places it wants to go, it's not a bad idea. It's kind of trying to combine the first, the Excellent Adventure and Bogus Journey, because you do have the time travel element, but then you also have dying and the afterlife and so forth. And then the resolution at the end, like I said, I think some people might be pissed off at. It worked just enough for me. It made just enough little excuses and little cheat notes here and there that I'm like, all right, I buy it fine. And then it just stops. Like I said, there's no epilogue to this at all. It just abruptly stops. Which, that's kind of a shame, because everything else was going so well, and I feel like I'm gonna assume the final Bill and Ted movie. I mean, I guess they could do a fourth, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you would. And maybe you do a spin-off movie with the daughters or something, which in a weird way, I'm almost glad it ends early, because so many of these movies try a spin-off, hey, now they're gonna be in the next one, whether or not this movie happens. It doesn't really sequel bait, which is nice, but then it has the opposite problem. It just totally stops very abruptly. So I guess I do recommend, if you're a Bill and Ted fan, you're gonna want to see it because the actors are all just so funny. It's great seeing Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter back, really doing these roles great. There's even one or two poignant scenes, which I feel like have always kind of weirdly been in some of the Bill and Ted movies. There's a really wonderful scene where they see like their older selves. I mean, okay, most of the movie is them seeing their older selves, but I guess I should say the final version of their older selves, which is both really funny and strangely touching. Like everything they're saying to each other, you could say like, oh, well, that's them being dumb, but there's something almost very philosophical about it too. You could actually read like layers in what they're saying. I almost wish that was the end of the movie, honestly, or near the end, but it's not. It's more like it's either in the middle or like beginning of the third act. So I do recommend it, and it isn't just riding, the nostalgia bus. There really is some fun, cool stuff in there. Plenty of stuff that doesn't make sense, but again, you kind of expect that in the Bill and Ted movies. But I guess even for the ending, as the emotional journey goes for these characters, for it to end so abruptly and for some of these characters to wrap up some of their problems so quickly, it does feel a little off. Like I said, the third act, for whatever reason, is surprisingly weak. But it does end on just a good enough and silly enough note and an upbeat note that you're just like, all right, Bill and Ted, I remember this. I like this. But yeah, if you're looking for, the ultimate Bill and Ted movie, it's not that. But I feel like even people that saw the trailer aren't necessarily thinking like, oh, this is going to be even better than Excellent Adventure and Bogus Journey. I think they know what it is. It is kind of a throwback. Let's get all the living performers back that we can, and let's give them a nice send-off. And I think that's what it's a nice send-off. I wish it was great. It had the potential to be a great send-off. And it starts off, the majority of it is a great send-off. Like I said, it's just that third act where things start to, for whatever reason, not quite come together. So yeah, it's not a most excellent adventure, it's a semi-excellent adventure. And that was enough for me. I feel like some people will, like I said, will definitely be put off by some of the choices, particularly in the third act. But remembering that it is Bill and Ted, remembering that there are a lot of things that don't make sense, and still keeping in mind the upbeat tone that they have, I liked it enough. I thought it worked. It just made it past the finish line. You know what I mean? But for some people, it might not, and I get it. I'm not gonna act like oh, what that was excellent. It's like it was a little off, but the first 2/3 of this movie are very, very funny. And like I said, it's all the actors. I can't think of any actor that came back and I was like, oh, they were a little off. Weirdly, the one actress, which really surprised me because I've never seen her off in anything, was maybe Kristen Schaal. I think because they were telling her to play it more straight. And this is one of those comedians that can make the phone book funny. Like, she is just a marvel at how funny she can be. And she did not get many laughs out of me, but I don't think they wrote many things to be funny. And I think they did want her to be a little bit more of a serious character, which, I mean, I feel like you don't put an actress like that in that role. She can play those serious roles fine, but I mean, this isn't that serious a movie. It's still a goofy comedy. So I would have liked to seen a few more laughs out of that, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it enough. The first 2/3 were just absolutely brilliant to me, and just I really thought this is going to be a great send-off, and then it crumbles a little bit at the end, but has just enough of a redeemable, maybe last 4 or 5 minutes. So there you go. I'd love to know what you guys think. If you really got into this movie, you thought it was okay, or it just totally betrayed what you thought Bill and Ted was about, but I really thought for the most part they came through, especially the actors and the comedic writing for the first 2/3 of this. I thought were really on point. So I think it's worth it, even though it's not perfect. I think it's worth paying the money, see it at home, watch it on demand. I legit enjoyed it, even if it's not perfect. So check it out. Let me know what you think. I'd love to know if you love it, hate it, think it's somewhere in between. Any of your thoughts, I'd love to know. So that's about it, and party on.